MLB DFS picks. Independence Day, July 4th slate. What pitchers have caught my eye? This is an early look. We have projected salaries, not the exact salaries. Christopher Sanchez jumping out, last outing, complete game win, shutout, 9 strikeouts against Miami. He matched up well with his sinker slider, changeup, cutter mix, which Miami being, one of the worst offenses in baseball, obviously they don't fare well against any pitches. And they didn't face well against his pitches. Chicago should be pretty similar. He should be able to again excel. And Christopher Sanchez is one of those unique pitchers in that he is a KGB plus guy, meaning that he gets strikeouts, although not quite elite. He's not Jack Flaherty, another KGB plus guy. Luis Castillo back in the day was an elite KGB plus guy. Strike them out, but also grounding them out. 60% ground ball rate. That's exactly what you want from a pitcher. 3.13 xFIP against Chicago. Locked in. Speaking of Miami, we've got Nick Pivetta in the pitcher's ballpark, 356 xFIP. We love what we got here. Fastball, slider, cutter combo. As I just mentioned, Miami pretty much bad against everything. And yeah, they're bad against fastball, sliders, and cutters. And Pivetta definitely should be able to take advantage of Miami and how terrible they are. Sanchez against Chicago, 25% K rate, maybe a little bit more upside. Pivetta against a 22% K rate for Miami against righties. But Miami, you get a little bit of more of a park upgrade in that situation with Nick Pivetta. Both should be popular on your Independence Day. The next pitcher that catches my eye, Bailey Ober, in a preferable matchup against Detroit. Ober's been very solid this year with the 9.1 K per 9, not walking too many batters, giving up a little bit too much fly balls, but he should be able to get away with that for the most part at Minnesota. Kind of a neutral ballpark, 392 xFIP. His numbers actually could be a little bit better if he was increasing his strand rate. Now, again, the flyball pitcher, he has given up his fair share of home runs, and that is a bit of a concern. But if you look at this specific matchup, the fastball, slider, changeup, pitch mix should work pretty well against Detroit. They grade below average against every one of those pitches. And if you go back to the beginning of April, the last time he faced Detroit, and it was actually a back-to-back, which sometimes can go the wrong way for a pitcher, but not for Bailey Ober in that back-to-back, 12 innings total. He only allowed 5 hits across those 2 games, 1 earned run in those 2 games, and compiled 9 strikeouts. Not the most strikeouts, but still decent. His last outing, 6 Ks, 2 earned runs. Charlie Morton next on our list, facing San Fran. Don't like playing against San Fran when they're facing lefties, but when they're facing a righty, I can do it. Morton has been pretty good. The only issue is, for whatever reason, he had 2 matchups against Washington in the last month, and Washington just took it to him. And then he also had a tough matchup against the Yankees. But in average to softer matchups, which San Francisco versus righties is, and San Francisco's got some inflated numbers here because they've been facing a lot of lefties lately. But against righties, I have no problem attacking them, especially the guy with 9.1 Ks per 9. The biggest issue for Morton, you can see here, is he's walking too many batters. He's also not getting out of jams. You get into jams when you walk too many batters. But it is a soft matchup that I think that he could excel in. And I don't know if you have to get there, but it's definitely on board. Andre Palante, I like to call this guy Frambar 2.0. We got Framber Valdez on the slate. He never really liked to play him because he just doesn't strike people out. He's an okay matchup, decent situation against. I don't see the strikeouts coming. I don't see the upside. You have to pay for him. Why not take what will probably be the cheaper version, the younger version? And Palente hasn't even reached his full potential. Now, one of the reasons why is because he walks too many hitters, but I think that's also because of his approach, which is to dance around hitters and not give in to hitters. And so he's walked too many guys. Again, that puts a little bit too many on the base path. And so he has this 5.23 ERA because of that. And then also not stranding, but more importantly, which can happen as a ground ball pitcher of 60%. That's phenomenal. He's got a 347 BABIP. And, typically ground ball pitchers will have higher BABIPs, but we would like to see that maybe have some positive regression, maybe cut down the walks a little bit, maybe be more aggressive, and he could become a really elite pitcher. One of the things that we like about Palente is not just the ground ball rate, which is 60%. And it was actually in 60 innings, I think 68 innings last year, was 78%. That's impressive. But another thing that we really like is that his hard hit rate, just 21% against lefties, 28% against right-handed batters. So he's keeping the ball on the ground. They're not hitting it very hard. Now, righties have gotten to him pretty well. But again, I think a lot of that is BABIP. That is just coming back. BABIP and too many walks, dancing around them too much. His strand rate could easily get better. He's still a young pitcher. The BABIP could come around a little bit. Like to see him increase the Ks, but he's got a matchup against Pittsburgh where he absolutely can excel. 25% K rate, although we don't expect a lot of strikeouts from him, but they only have a 126 ISO, 284 WOBA, 81 WRC+. As cold as ever lately. Got a decent ballpark. I like it. Tobias Myers, young stud figuring things out. We talked about this in the last podcast, and there is a link in the spreadsheet discussing a really interesting article about him. Went through 5 teams. Finally, Milwaukee figures him out, but that's what Milwaukee does. There's been plenty of pitchers in the past that haven't worked out in other teams, but the Milwaukee training staff and coaching staff, from the minors to the pros, figure out how to make these guys great. It is at Colorado, so it is a bit of a concern, but his stuff could work. It should work. His fastball has like an elite spin rate. All of his pitches have elite spin rates. 4-0 in June, 71 ERA. That was before his last start, though. So in his last start, he did not get the win. Was okay. Still did get 6 strikeouts. But in that start, so we see he gave up 3 earned runs, 6 strikeouts against the Cubs. He gave up a 2-run home run in the first inning. Then he settled in and only gave up 1 run across the next 5 frames. So not really worried there. And also, that being said, the Cubs are pretty good against his pitch mix, which is he relies a lot on a changeup and a cutter. And so the fact that they were able to get 7 hits and 3 earned runs doesn't surprise me too much. Colorado's not good against anything. 26% K rate, 142, 79 WRC plus, a 41 WRC plus over the last 7 games. Have no problem attacking there. Alec Marsh, most people know that he burned a bunch of people against Oakland, and so it's hard to shake that off. But then he bounced back in his next start, 5 strikeouts, just 1 earned run, 6 innings. Pretty solid pitcher. Good matchup against Tampa, 24% K rate, 130 ISO, below average team. Park is a pretty safe place in Kansas City. One concern, though, is that since the end of May, he's got a 5.64 ERA, 1.4 home runs per 9. That's a bit of a concern. Hasn't been great. I don't think you need to go to him in a full slate, but someone worth mentioning. Ben Lively in a preferable matchup against Chicago, so you got to mention that. 23% K rate, 127 ISO, 275 WOBA, 76 WRC plus. You can always attack the White Sox. Cleveland, the ball's flying out a little bit, but it's at least less of a hitter's park than Chicago's hitter's park. You look at his starts, 3 or fewer runs in 11 of his 12 starts. Pretty strong. Last outing, 2 earned runs, 5 Ks. Lively and Marsh kind of in that same category of just decent pitchers. And both have pretty good matchups, so they're worth considering. Jose Quintana, I talked about him yesterday. Looks like he got his start pushed back, so I'll just go ahead and read you what Quintana's doing lately. Home run concerns as always, but at least he's not as bad as, again, as I've mentioned, came up through the Charlotte Knights, stud for the White Sox, and then it just fell apart, and those Angels years were kind of ugly, bounced around, but he seemingly has figured things out. Washington's not great against lefties. 109 to ISO, 283. So that really helps. We worry about the home runs, 1.4 home runs per 9, but Washington's not throwing a lot of power at him. And James Wood is a lefty, so don't have to worry maybe so much about him. 283 WOBA, 81 WRC plus. It's a spot you can definitely attack with Jose Katana. 370 ERA since the middle of May, 8 Ks per 9. Home runs are still there, but I think he could get away with it. His last outing, 7 strikeouts, just 2 earned runs. Like to see him go deeper, but when you're walking, it's not too many. Randy Vasquez is kind of interesting. The advanced stats and just don't look good. Not striking anybody out. But you dig a little bit deeper and you see he's an okay ground ball pitcher, a little bit fly ball. 5.10 ERA is not appealing, but we do notice that he has a 367 BABIP and 1.9 home runs per 9. The home runs could have some positive regression. The BABIP, considering he's not super ground ball guy, that should drop down as well. And as those numbers fall, so should his ERA, and his performance should, come around. This was a former Yankee prospect. We expect positive things from him moving forward, and he really hasn't been that bad this season. And maybe it's because he was a Yankee prospect and he was a part of a trade that the expectations are a little too high, a little too soon. But overall, he's only allowed 1 run or fewer in 3 of the last 4 games. And on the season, in his 11 starts, only 3 have been bad starts. 8 of his 11 starts, borderline quality starts. He also has not given up a home run in the last 2 games. Might be time to start putting your eyes on him. And he's facing a team where he can be successful against Texas, 136 ISO, 298 WOBA, 90 WRC plus. Roansy Contreras. This guy was, before there was Paul Skeens, there was Roansy in Pittsburgh. People were excited about him. He was going to possibly be the next big Pirates arm. Well, then when they called up Paul Skeens, they needed a spot on the 40-man, and Roansy got shown the door. And he's been pretty good for the Angels. He was never really that bad for Pittsburgh. They just gave up on him too soon. There was an interesting article about all the great arms that gone through Pittsburgh that either they had to let go because they have money or they couldn't figure it out. Like Jameson Taillon left and went on to have some pretty good days. Charlie Morton left, went on to have some pretty good days. They couldn't afford Cole Garrett, went on to have some pretty good days. The Yankees closer, the name is eluding me at the moment, went on to be the Yankees closer. So whereas Milwaukee is great about turning arms around, Pittsburgh is pretty good at messing up people and letting them go too soon. And Roansy could be the next guy to really become elite. The only issue is he does need stretched out. He only went 3 innings in his last start. He's been mainly doing relief work for Pittsburgh and mainly doing relief work for the Angels. They've moved him into the starting rotation. But it's a matchup where it's very appealing, right? It's Oakland. So if we get him at a discount and Oakland does Oakland, which is 27% K rate against righties, 140 ISO, 290 WOBA, 92 WRC plus. There's definitely strikeout upside. That even if he doesn't give you more than 4 innings, it might work if he is able to pile up some strikeouts. He does have an 8.5 K per 9. Now he's walking too many hitters, and the home run issues are there. But in this matchup, I think you're not going to have to worry about it. Albert Suarez, the great story of the longest stretch between wins, right? He was with, it wasn't the Angels. It was another American League team, and then he went overseas for like a decade. Finally comes back, gets an opportunity with Baltimore. I think it was the Angels. No, it was the Giants. It was the Giants. He might have been with the Angels before that. Baltimore signs him a minor league contract, gets a job with the starting rotation, and it's been fun. Now, he did struggle in 2 recent games, but they were against New York and Houston, and the Houston game wasn't really that bad. New York game was kind of rough. The Houston game wasn't that bad, but he did bounce back in his last start. Didn't get any strikeouts really, but he did throw 6 scoreless innings. And I just can't help but take an opportunity to talk about Albert Suarez. What an awesome baseball story. Landon Knack for the Dodgers, number 12 prospect. We do worry about his low BABIP, but he is more of a fly ball pitcher, so that's going to happen. He is stranding runners. That could go in the other direction. So some people might say, 477 xFIP, that's what he is. He's not a 210 ERA guy. And we only have 25 innings. So it is fair to say maybe this guy isn't that great. And the matchup is not perfect. It's not bad. But in his last outing, he looked pretty good. 7 strikeouts, just 1 earned run in 4 innings pitched. As I mentioned, number 12 prospect, good spin rate, good changeup, good curve. The stuff is there. Is it a little early to get in on Landon Knack? I don't know. I don't think so. His stuff worked pretty well in the last matchup. He just caught, he's got 2 starts under his belt since getting called back up. He was halfway decent. I mean, he was pretty good when he was pitching earlier this season. Then he went back down to the minors. They brought him back up, and he pitched well against San Francisco and the Angels. This is a little tougher of a matchup, but he is someone that kind of got my eye on just simply because I think his stuff is good. And I don't want to overreact to small sample size for BABIP. I don't want to react to small sample size for strain rate. Sure, these numbers could go in either direction, but just simply from a standpoint of stuff, looks pretty good. Kyle Tyler, what are my notes on Kyle Tyler? 280 ERA in AAA, so not bad. Strikeout numbers weren't really that high. Strikeout numbers are not that good right now. His walk numbers are not that good right now. But he has been halfway decent in his 2 starts. Maybe not that impressive against Seattle. You would expect big numbers, but you really wouldn't expect big numbers in a first start against Seattle. And then in his next start against Philadelphia, he held Philadelphia to just 1 run in 4 innings. Got 4 Ks. That's pretty solid against a Philadelphia team. He's going to be at home in a favorable park. Now, we do know that Boston hits righties pretty well, so there is concern there. But Boston hasn't been hitting pretty well lately, and we have seen, Belozo, as I talked about the other day, Valente Belozo had a real good opportunity to shut down Boston, and that's absolutely what he did. We looked at his advanced numbers, we broke him down, and we understood that as a fly ball pitcher in Miami, Belozo, there was a path to success, and he was an interesting value pick that no one was really going to go near. So here we go again, Kyle Tyler. Can we make it work again? I don't know. Maybe so. Andrew Thorpe, I just got to make some mentions of Andrew Thorpe. I don't think you want to play him. You're going to probably want to target him more likely with Cleveland because the young kid's not quite getting there just yet, but he is number 6 prospect for the White Sox, probably going through some growing pains. Jumped up from AA at AA. Again, these sometimes are just giving you notes so that you're familiar with these pitchers moving forward to help you make better picks. I'm not necessarily saying you got to attack Thorpe or that you need to roster Thorpe. I would not roster him, but I'm just trying to give you some inside information or stuff that you're probably not getting from other podcasts where people are mainly just reading the numbers. I'm trying to give you a little bit more context when I can. Jump from AA, 7-1, 135 ERA. Bounced back in his last start. The walks are high in Major League Baseball. Again, that matchup I think was against Arizona, and they struggle with changeups. That's one of his strongest pitches, so he was able to succeed. I think he's going to be in for a long day in this matchup, but there's going to be days where I will want to roster Andrew Thorpe. Thanks for joining me. Like, subscribe, share. Have a wonderful Independence Day. USA, USA, America. Yeah.